Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody, and welcome to the 16th CDOIQ conference from MIT, and welcome to this episode of CDO Matters. I'm here with my good friend Sanjeev, a former fellow recovering analyst from Gartner, and I'm excited to talk to him today about what we've been experiencing over the last 3 days at this fantastic conference.
Thank you. And Malcolm and I met up at this conference. We thought we'll do a joint webinar, video, podcast, and we would basically make it a joint CDO Matters, which is your podcast, and It Depends, which is my podcast, and we just do a two-in-one. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. So what are some of the key trends that you've seen so far at the event? Anything kind of stand out as remarkable or memorable?
Yeah, a couple of things. So first of all, what I've noticed is that the CDO role has become really one of negotiation and sales. I guess it was always like that, but the CDOs are getting much more tightly integrated with the businesses. In fact, one thing that I keep hearing is that the CDO role is becoming like an hub and spoke. So there is a shift away from only doing compliance and regulatory stuff into doing analytics. So it's all about monetizing, democratizing, getting value out of your data. So there's a huge focus. In fact, if I may add one more thing, what I've noticed is that there's a last few CDOIQs where I was involved, there was a lot of focus on MDM, which is your space, right?
Yep.
This year, it's not about MDM. It is about, so what? What is the value? And I'm sure you get that all the time. So there's much more focus on how do I do better analytics? How do I improve my quality? How do I do self-service analytics rather than let's talk tech?
Yeah. Well, I've seen the exact same thing. And that's really, really good news, I think, for CDOs. I think that's good news for the space. I know that, when we were still at Gartner, they had published their recent CDO survey, and that said that 25% of CDOs are responsible for digital transformation initiatives. And I think that's what you're seeing here now, which is this focus more on business outcomes. Like I'm the CDO and I'm responsible for customer experience or customer retention, or even in some cases, research and development in new solutions to meet some of those transformation goals. So yeah, exactly what you're saying, totally consistent with some of the things I've seen. Some of the other things that I've seen, which are interesting, is this notion of product management in the data management space, like the application of data products, right?
Yes.
I think we can thank the data mesh a little bit for this, because that's kind of a core tenet there. But I think it goes a little bit farther than that, which is the application of kind of product management as a discipline into the data space, right? Like if you were going to be making a widget, what would the market need be? What would the market size be? How much would people be willing to pay for that widget? How would it function? And all of those things. So at a high level, I think that's a really good trend, is this trend towards kind of product management in the data management space. So that's certainly one of the trends that I've been seeing.
So just for the viewers, you might have seen me now. This is my third day in a row I'm doing like some sort of recording. And actually the joke is that between Scott Taylor, AKA the Data Whisperer, Malcolm and I, we've done all permutations, combinations. Scott was on my previous It Depends podcast. But why I'm bringing this up is because yesterday I was on Malcolm and Scott's podcast, LinkedIn Live, and I was explaining how data as a product has become so important, where we are thinking of data. Physically, it may be the same thing as before. There's no difference. But logically, when we think data as a product, then we think of its entire life cycle. How was it produced? After it's consumed, how do you destroy data that you don't need anymore? So bringing that people and process discipline is what makes data as a product different from the way we have produced data previously. Because physically, it could be the same thing. It could be a table, a schema, or some sort of like an API call or a SQL with a notebook.
Yeah, I love the idea of like, let's come up with a sunset strategy for our data instead of archival.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
right. Like I like that.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Like, are we going to sunset the data, right? Like sunsetting a product. So this notion of product lifecycle, I love that. And there's so many things from a product management perspective to like. I guess where there's a little bit of a twist is that if I was building a product from scratch, I would go and source the raw materials from a whole bunch of places. And I think in the data world, you're kind of given your materials. Like, and I was in a session yesterday, kind of the joke I said, it was like, those team building exercises where they give you like a toilet paper roll and some pasta and some duct tape and paper clips, and you have to go make something out of that. I see a little bit of a metaphor there in our world where there's like data, there's this set basket of data, and it's like, okay, now go make something to fill a need. So I still think it's a valid approach. That's certainly one of the trends. What about some of the people that you've had a chance to interact with and meet? What are some of the things that stand out?
To me, that is the highlight of this conference.
I agree.
It's a networking because these are the people here are the CDOs, CDAOs, but these are the senior level decision makers with decades of experience, under their sleeves, and just learning from them, what challenges they face. In fact, to be very honest, sitting in a session to me has a very high opportunity cost, because you can always watch the sessions recorded, but the interactions that you have in the hallway are just outstanding. I mean, I don't think even the organizers have seen this kind of networking even before pandemic, when they used to meet. So this is a very big event. Over 2,000 people have registered here. Some people didn't show up at the last minute because of COVID-19 reasons. But what about you? What have you seen?
I couldn't agree more. Often we go to these events, and it's the event for farmers. Right. And then when you go, and only 20% of the people are actually farmers. And in this case, it's the event for CDOs, and there are many, many, many CDOs here in title and in role. And I think that makes it fairly unique. So certainly if I was a newer CDO or even a well-established CDO, this is the event that I would want to come to. There's a couple interesting twists here. There's the usual kind of conference type experience, right? Where there's vendors, of course, because they're paying for the food, and thank you vendors for the food. And there's a price tag to that, which means you need to kind of walk through the vendor hall to get to the presentations. That's normal stuff, and that's okay. But one of the really cool twists here is this connection into academia that I didn't really even knew until this event even existed, right? Like, I'm going to these presentations from MIT professors who are talking about data quality, talking about entity resolution, talking about quantum computing. Went to a session yesterday about that was just fascinating. So that's an interesting angle here that I've been finding really refreshing. Is this angle of academia that I wasn't familiar with before.
Actually, that reminds me. This morning, I was getting coffee from the cafe on the exhibit hall, and I started talking to a professor. His name is Dale Morgan. In 1993, he started the first MIT class on data. Before that, there was no class that had the title data. And he was on his way to teach the 85th session of data and models. That is the name of his class. He's from Trinidad. And it was just fascinating and he was talking about Mark Zuckerberg and how when Mark Zuckerberg was in Cambridge and was starting Facebook, and how he had advised him and told him, by the way, it's not a good idea, don't do it. And I was telling him, it was like the FedEx case, the guy who did FedEx, he got a C in his project, and turned out to be the right decision.
Yeah, I just sat in a session from Tom Davenport, who's well known in the space of data management and MDM, and a session about AI, and listing all the books that he had written, all this long list of books. So it's just really been eye-opening. I would absolutely recommend this for any CDO who wants to build their network, who wants to learn more about, the practice of being a CDO. Certainly well worth the time here to come. Just a quick disclaimer here. Obviously, we're in a common area, so there's noise behind it. And we're kind of crashing in one of the undergraduate lounges here in the computer science and AI building. The laboratory at MIT, which is a unique twist as well. So that's been kind of cool. We're interacting directly with students. Took an interesting form yesterday where apparently they ran out of lunches because there was a run from the MIT students on the food. They couldn't quite protect all of the the food from the MIT students, but I can't certainly blame them if I was.
The funniest thing was later in the evening, some prospect students came by with their moms, and they tried to get the freebie swags. Pens, pads, stickers, and the vendors' booths were like, sorry, only for people with these badges, So by now, people had realized that there are a lot of these people, and it was so interesting because the moms were like so keen on, getting some of the stuff, like things that we take for granted in all these conferences, like socks and T-shirts, and so.
What do you think about some of the vendors? Right? Have you noticed anything interesting in terms of the vendors that are participating here?
For me, no. And the reason I say that is because I have seen some of the same vendors now in half a dozen different conferences. So for me, this is a very different conference compared to Snowflake Summit, over 10,000 people in Las Vegas, and then Databricks Summit, MongoDB, and so many other summits. So I'm seeing the same vendors. So for them, it's the same thing, just a different venue.
Right.
What about you?
Well, I'm kind of struck by how many vendors are here who are focused on, I suspect what Gartner would have called metadata management, or roughly kind of the data governance space, but really focused on profiling, discovery, and cataloging. Right? I'm really struck, at least half of the vendors here are really focused on that. A lot of smaller providers that I had not heard of before. To me, this is suggestive of more of a push towards the data catalog as a foundation of kind of a data management stack. You and I have always known that, right? It's been something that we covered at Gartner, but the vendor focus on cataloging function, I think is interesting, and I think to a certain degree may be a little bit of a reaction to focus on data fabrics, potentially a focus on metadata management. And maybe even a focus on this broader notion of more of a kind of what Gartner is calling a data and analytics governance platform, with all of these kind of pieces fit together, but at the foundation of that is catalog. So there's a lot of vendors here that are doing that. I've had an interesting experience going vendor to vendor and asking like for an elevator pitch. Like it's kind of something that I do at these events. And can you articulate value of your solution in 30 seconds? It's really startling how few can. Right. If you can't, if I'm a CDO, I'm a busy person, and I want to know what value you bring. You can't really articulate that in 30 seconds or less. I think you're gonna have a challenge. So I found that to be an interesting thing of really kind of pushing the vendors to see, okay, what do you do that's unique?
Right. See, this is very interesting. You mentioned that because I am people who follow me, they know I like to understand how things are done. Or at the surface level, I feel most technologies look identical in a category, like data catalogs. Okay, you're a data catalog, you're a data catalog, and you're a data catalog. But when you start peeling the onion, you realize, oh my God, you are focused on this, you do this, and you do that. So I find that at this conference, maybe the CDOs and the C-level suite are at such high level that a lot of stuff starts from, let me tell you what is data governance. And I'm like, I don't want to hear that.
Right.
I didn't come all the way here to get one-on-one on a topic. I want to go deeper. And I don't find that in a conference like this.
Right.
It's a very high level, but it's also very much focused on people and process. That is a role of a CDO.
Yeah.
I'm more focused on the technology part, which I get when I talk to people one-on-one.
Yeah.
So like the elevator pitch, sometimes I'm like, okay, I hear your elevator pitch. Like I talk to a security company and they say, we do all of this. I'm like, well, so do others. But why are you different and how do you do it? And actually they had a hard time explaining to me that difference because at this, the vendors have sent their salespeople or the sales executives and they don't know deep down how their technology is unique.
Yeah, well, that's problematic.
Yeah.
You need to know how you are unique as a vendor, or if I'm a CDO, I need to understand what makes you unique. Why should I give you money? I think there's a metaphor, or at least an analog here into data storytelling as well, right? Tell me the story of how your solution helps me, as I need to be able to tell the story of how the data that I provide helps you. And it's easy for technology people like me or us to say, well, we don't sell. We're not salespeople, right?
Yeah.
I would make out maybe a horrible salesperson. I don't know. I've never tried because I've always thought that sales was somebody else's job. But at the heart, this is something I've been hearing in a lot of presentations here, and it's consistent with what we've been hearing for years now, is this notion of data storytelling and being able to tell a data story.
Yeah.
And how does data drive outcomes? How does data support business processes? And I just find it ironic that the vendors who are supposed to be supporting these clients, these customers, these companies can't tell their own data story. So I think we need to do a little bit of work. And
I cannot agree more with you. This is my pet peeve. And if any of the vendors are listening to this, then don't start by telling me what you have. In fact, almost on a daily basis, a vendor will walk me through the pitch and I'm like literally trying to parse and understand what is it that makes them unique. So I'm like, asking questions, taking notes, and then we reach the very end. Now we're reaching end of our slot. And they say, oh, let me tell you, this client, Pfizer, did this with our product. I'm like, now I understand what your product does. Why didn't you start with that? You did this bottoms up, like me discovering what you do and trying to connect the dots, when you could have just told me, this is how our products are used. Now let me tell you, what's the next layer of detail and what we built.
Yeah. So we can transition a little bit. I would love to, since we're both ex-Gartner, I would love to better understand what drove your transition and where you see, Sanjeev 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. I'd love to understand what you kind of envision for how you're going to help CDOs and other data leaders in the space.
Amazing question, by the way. I'm getting this question every day. This week of the middle of July is 1 year anniversary since I left Gartner. So now my first year unexpectedly turned out to be very busy and very meaningful. So thank you. So because when I took the plunge, I had no idea what lay ahead. And now people are asking me, so are you going to hire more people? Are you going to build a company? And can we come help you? So this is literally on daily basis, people are asking me, what is your long-term strategy 1 year from now, 2 years from now? And I'm going on camera by saying, I don't have one. I'm being very honest. I'm living in the moment. And I didn't become independent thinking that, I'll be doing all of these amazing things. So organically, if things happen, they happen. But and some people have actually given me a lot of grief. These are my well-wishers, and they're telling me that we are afraid for you. You don't have a strategy. Tell us what you'll do a year or two from now. and I know I should have one. Maybe, and by the way, I get a lot of unsolicited advice, so I have no dearth of people telling me what I should do. But then there's
It's coming. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, yes, I do want to hear your.
I'm
I just want people to know that I feel that we are living in such a dynamic space. I see my clients with strategies that they keep throwing out and coming up with new strategies. So maybe it's not a bad thing to not have a strategy. So I did both schools of thought, so I'm still deciding.
There's nothing wrong with living in the moment. How else are we supposed to live, right? Like,
Yes,
I love that. You used the word earlier this morning when we were having coffee downstairs, serendipity.
Yes.
And I think there's certainly something to be said there. In my case, I'm just over 3 months after my Gartner experience, which was a wonderful experience. Great company, fantastic company, fantastic people, really, really smart people. Gartner adds a ton of value in the market. But there's something that to me, there was some blocking and tackling that helped my transition. Obviously, I got a great offer and a great opportunity. But there was, while I was at Gartner, after I was there about a year and a half, I kept noticing a recurring theme.
Mm-hmm.
And that theme is that, I was writing research and you were writing research. We were all writing research and it was fantastic, fact-based, quantifiable stuff about best practices. Do A, do B, do C, do these things and you will succeed, right? We had survey after survey that backs it up. And I would be advising my clients these things, A, B, C. And then I would get on the call with them in another 3, 4, 5 months and they hadn't done it. And I took a really hard look at my messaging and the way that I was delivering the message. And I was like, okay, what's wrong here? Something is a little broken. Is it me? Am I just checking a box and they're just going and doing their own thing anyway? I didn't come up with all those answers, but one thing I realized was that from the perspective of helping CDOs and helping data leaders, helping CIOs, from my perspective, at the very least, I think there's a better way.
Yeah.
I don't know what that way is yet. I'm going to allow serendipity to help guide me.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that the better way is, but I know that there has to be one because, yesterday I was in a session hosted by Joe Caserta, a super smart guy, been in the space a long time, where he showed this slide that was basically a list of stats of how we as a community are kind of failing, right? How data management is still needing a lot of help. And we did a lot of research at Gartner that was saying the same thing in terms of the state of data governance and how often data leaders really understand the value of data. Are we treating data as an asset? All these things. And we continue to really kind of struggle here. So I'm passionate. I'm really passionate about helping equip data leaders with the information that they need in the way that is most effective for them to receive it. I happen to think that these podcasts are a great tool for that. And LinkedIn's a great tool for that. And there are other tools that I have greater access to now than I did before. So I'm excited to having a conversation in another 2 to 3 years and hopefully some of those stats about the state of data management start to get a little bit better.
Yeah, so on the similar lines, what I'm helping, how I'm approaching the data management issues is my goal in life is to demystify, create some sort of like hierarchies, taxonomies of how do you consume these technology? How do you understand the space? That is my number one goal is you pick a category or a space or a capability, and there's just so many products in that. So how do you take a step back and say, there is some sort of a flow chart? If you want to do this, then here are some companies.
Decision tree.
Yeah, decision tree. Yeah. Exactly. Thank you. Yeah. So that is what I'm trying to understand constantly, create a point of view and demystify. So people say, and now I understand because the language we use, like you talk about data storytelling. Yeah. The language we use is very hard for business people to understand.
It is. Yeah, it is a great example. Scott and I had an interesting back and forth, a dialogue. Scott Taylor, the data whisperer. I had a dialogue about data literacy yesterday. And I happen to think that phrase itself, data literacy, is a little bit condescending. I think.
Yes.
I think, because it seems to infer, because the opposite of that is illiteracy, right? And you're basically, we're basically telling the business, well, you just don't understand the data. And it's fascinating. I was in this session yesterday where I thought that I'd asked the world's greatest question to Joe Caserta. I said, if data and analytics leaders were more business literate, would we be asking business leaders to be more data literate? I thought it was like a mic drop. I thought like I just asked the bottom of the question. And then he turned it around. And this is what makes him a brilliant consultant. Is he said, well, you may want to think of data literacy this way. And what he said is that if you walk outside and you want to know the temperature, you can open your phone and then you can look at your phone and you can see the temperature, and you know that 95 means a lot and 35 means less, and you know that there's a scale there, and you inherently know that how that scale works and the functions of that scale. And I was like, oh, it's a brilliant metaphor, right? Like that right there is how we need to be telling stories. That is how we need to explain the importance of data literacy, instead of saying I have a data literacy program and you business folks are coming along for the ride because you're flirting with illiteracy. Instead, I don't know all the magic answers here yet, but I do know that one example of, we know how thermostats work inherently is a fantastic metaphor. We need to be focused more on those metaphors, focused more on those kind of real world kind of applications of these best practices that mean something to business leaders.
Like there is no such thing as finance literacy.
Right.
Like in our company today, we're going to make sure everyone has manufacturing literacy, supply chain literacy. It's like there's no such thing. But why is so? I think we treat data with kid gloves. Right. We can, anyone can be a CDO, in my opinion. Like if you are a smart leader with good thinking, but more important, like you speak well, you could be the CDO. But would you just make anyone the CFO of a company? I don't think so,
Right. Yeah.
So I think we treat data like it's like a football, just bounce it around, So.
Well, it's another thing that I heard, a common recurring theme that I've heard. I first heard it in this panel of CDOs. So there was the CDO of Scotiabank, there's a CDO of Best Buy, Craig Brabeck, who used the term evangelists. I love that, because I think we should all be evangelists about analytics, evangelists about data. So I love that term. But CDO of State Farm and others. And there was a common theme that came out of that panel discussion that I heard echoed in others, which was this notion of be humble, right? As CDOs, it's okay to be humble. And I think it's okay to acknowledge past failures, and maybe we focus too much on how things work instead of the benefit that they drive, and maybe we focus too much on potentially not being sensitive enough in terms of how data is used, or the whole data literacy thing. So this notion of humility I found to be a rather powerful one, because I think that's the best way to get people to open doors. And that's a big role of the CDOs, to go out and network and to sit down with everybody and understand and empathize with what's not working, and be passionate about helping to provide some solutions to that. So that was it was really refreshing to hear these professionals who are making a lot of money, who are very, very successful, talk about how important it is to be humble in their role.
I completely agree with Tom, but I have a question for you. So if we are evangelists,
yes,
then could we all be part of something called like the Church of Modern Data Saints?
It's funny, when I was recruited for my role into Profisee, it was originally the job was posted as MDM evangelist, and I saw that and I was like, okay, I get it, right? I understand the role, and that's a very, very useful and can be powerful word, but I kind of shied away from it a little bit at the beginning because of the religious overtones. But from the pure definition of evangelist, I think it's okay, right? It's like, I'm out there, I'm a spokesperson for the value of data. I'm a spokesperson for how transformative data analytics can be. And I think we all need to be that. We're doing that right now. Right? We're all doing that right now. So Does that make me an evangelist? Yes. Does it make me a salesperson? Yes, it does. And those things are okay. Those things are important. So maybe my last question to you, looks like we came maybe we're up upon lunch or something here. It's getting a little louder. Where do you see things going? Where are things going, right? From a data and analytics space, from a CDO perspective, what's the future look like?
I think it's going to get more complicated because we are now embracing the hybrid multi-cloud space. In fact, some people are not even calling it multi-cloud; they're calling it super cloud.
Super cloud.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So super cloud is a new term that my friend Dave Vellante and John Furrier have come up with from the Cube. So, but whatever we call it, the thing is that cloud has made starting a new company so easy and cheap that there is a profusion of brilliant minds. In fact, the funny thing that's happened is that in the last 2 years of the pandemic, people have sat at home and they've built stuff. Some of these people have built stuff on the side. So they're working for a company, trying to solve a problem, and then they come up with this new technology. And they say, wait, why am I working for this company when I can start my own company? VCs have been very open with their purse strings. So they've opened up their wallets and funded these companies. So I feel that in every category, there are dozens and dozens of companies that have come up, some startups, some established, and we are going to see this best of breed unbundling going on for quite some time before people give up and say, no, let's just integrate and bundle things because we just don't have enough bandwidth, time in the day to try to understand these technologies.
Yep.
So I think, analysts, companies, firms are going to be very busy because there's a lot of education that needs to be done.
Yeah, I certainly see the growth of startups in the space. Most certainly, there's a bunch in the exhibit hall downstairs. Certainly seeing that. So I'm seeing this kind of push towards more integrated solutions. What maybe call a data and analytics governance platform. I'm certainly seeing that. Writ large, from my perspective, in the data space, it's all about scale. Right, the digital transformation is blowing up the amount of data we've had, and we keep saying this, but it's always true. Yeah. There's more data than there ever has been before, and in that data, there's more insights than there ever has been before. And we need tools to drive scale, right? We need processes to drive scale. And the best way to do that is through automation. Yeah. Right. And it's not automation for the sake of automating people. It's automation to keep pace with the amount of data that's out there and to keep pace with the insights that the business needs to stay competitive. Right. So we've learned this coming out of the pandemic. The ability to pivot fast matters. Yeah. The ability to manage disruptions matters. My goodness, right now, if there's nothing, but this whole world is typified by disruptions, whether it's war or it's material shortages or pandemics. So the ability to recover from these things and the ability to keep pace is clearly a function of having a solid, well-managed, well-governed data estate at scale. Yeah. And that scale will be enabled by the cloud. Most certainly, cloud is now, I would call it table stakes. You've got to be there, absolutely. But you're there to enable the scale and to enable the automation. So there is AI, there's ML, most certainly. These are not just kind of buzzwords, but machine learning is being heavily applied in data management today, and it will continue to be. So the augmentation of traditional processes, whether data quality, data integration, MDM, those things will most certainly continue more and more automation to keep pace with the change. Maybe 5 years, 7 years down the road, I'm excited about distributed ledger technology. Yes. I'm excited about blockchain. Yes, I said it. Quantum. Quantum, my goodness. Computers that don't run on 0 and 1, that run on probabilities of a 0 and 1, which is it's a mind blower to me. Most certainly that will play a role in helping to process extremely large sums of data and volumes of data, led primarily, I believe, by financial services. where applying quantum models into financial services will give, the ability to arbitrage, trade. The list is long. I think financial services will drive quantum, but it's there and it's real. So it's an exciting time to be in data management. It's
absolutely.
an exciting time to be here. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of CDO Matters.
Thank you so much.
And it depends.
Yes, and it depends. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Such a pleasure once again to talk to you.
Thanks all.
See you. Bye.
Wonderful.